For more on the ongoing ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas and the president's news conference, let's welcome in foreign policy expert Harley Lippman. Harley, welcome back to the 11th Hour Report. Thanks for sticking around and being here to discuss what we just witnessed. First and foremost, I know the headlines tomorrow are going to be all about Gaza and about Trump and Netanyahu saying that they should take it over, in essence, and turn it into something nice instead of what it is right now.
It's remarkable. I think I have to pinch myself. This is one of the most inspiring and historic press conferences on the Middle East I've seen in, I don't know, years and years. This is an extraordinary moment on so many levels. One, let's start off with showing that this speaks to the very close relationship of the United States and Israel. It really does. And it resets that back where it should be, where it was really shooken up during the Biden administration. The second thing is that Bibi Netanyahu said that Trump was bringing this to a whole new level. He is. He's being a visionary. And a lot of people may think it's a crazy idea. How do you take all these people out of Gaza and bring them to other countries? You know, what's amazing about this is that the president is looking at this as a humanitarian. He keeps on bringing up how horrible the situation is in Gaza, how terrible it is that so many people are dying, that the Palestinians have had a terrible life, both before Hamas, during Hamas, and while the war has been going on. And President Trump is speaking as a humanitarian who thinks that if he could give them a better life, bring them to another place in the Middle East, where, in his own words, he says they could have a nice home and uplift their life without fear of violence and death. How good is that? He's speaking for the Palestinian people to uplift them. It's great.
He is, Harley, but, and I want to, first of all, say I've been to Gaza. I spent significant time in Gaza, weeks at a time, and I know how rough it is, how rough it can be, how decimated it was in the last war, and how decimated it is now. And of course, it's in a wonderful, incredible location and could be a jewel in the Middle East. But there was one person missing, or multiple people missing from that news conference. You had President Trump, you had Benjamin Netanyahu, but there was no Arab voice up there with them saying, yeah, this is a great idea, let's do it. And Donald Trump referenced some Arab leaders being in favor of what he's proposing, although there's no formal proposal here. But without the Arabs taking part in this deal, without them being present at the table, it feels like something else.
Well, you're spot on, except for one thing. That's the brilliance of a visionary. The visionary sees things that no one else sees. And so in the moment, you're quite correct. Where's the Arab voice? And right now, they're not there. But this is what leaders do. Leaders bring people around. It's a process. So I think if Trump stays determined, which I hope he does, I think it brings on a whole new era of peace in the Middle East and in the world. Trump is really big on spotting a problem and coming up with a solution. And it's a viable solution. First off, he points out that everything that has happened before has not worked. And he's basically saying, in effect, what's the definition of being crazy? Doing the same thing at the same time and expecting a different outcome. He sees it's only been wars, it's only been misery. And he sees that that's probably going to continue. So he's thinking out of the box. Yep. That's what he's good at. And he's bold, and he's coming up with a visionary plan. I couldn't agree more, Harley. I couldn't. Not perfect.
Yes. And I couldn't agree more. And this is what he does. And we've seen the evidence of that over the last couple of weeks. For tariffs, for example, where he announces this huge tax on our neighbors, and the next thing you know, they have a new deal in place where they're doing things that they weren't going to do before, that now they're going to do to avoid these tariffs. So he's doing that potentially in this case as well, and it could, in fact, be a brilliant stroke. And as you mentioned, and as he said, you have to look at history. And history, to date, they haven't been able to work this out. So maybe this is a long-term solution. I want to ask you, though, about the ceasefire, which is holding so far between Israel and Hamas. Hostages are being returned in phases, maybe not quickly enough for some people, but they are being returned, and the shots are not being fired. So I'm just wondering if you think this deal could survive long enough for all of the hostages to come home and something better to happen south of Israel's border?
Obviously, that's a big question. I think it's going to work. I think the hostages are coming home. I think Hamas is very weak. Trump has made it clear that there'll be catastrophic consequences if Hamas does not keep their word. He made that point even at the press conference. So I'm pretty confident that the hostages will come back. The real question is always what happens after. And we all know that while this was a necessary deal, on some level, it's also a bad deal. And for the simple reason that 1,000 terrorists are being let out of Israeli jails to gain the release of innocent Israeli hostages. And what do you think those 1,000 Palestinian terrorists are going to do tomorrow? They're not going to go home and take cooking classes. They're going to come back, and as Bibi Netanyahu said in the press conference, they're going to come back and do another October 7th and make it bigger and bloodier. So the problem is, how do you address the bigger issue is that it pays to take hostages because it works. You get your own terrorists released from jail when you do that. So I think that's a bigger and broader Israel that civilized nations have to face.
I couldn't agree more. That always bothered me about this deal. The fact that they were giving up Israel was so many more heads for heads, so 10 to 1 or more. And they are potential terrorists. They are convicted terrorists. They are people who have murdered Israelis, and they're being allowed out of prison to go back and potentially, as you said, regroup, rearm, and carry out another attack. I mean, I'm sure they're angry after being in an Israeli jail for all of this time. So that did bother me, and I don't know that you can ever trust Hamas. And I don't know how Israel ensures that Hamas doesn't regain control of Gaza in some way after the hostages have been released. I mean, they can try and continue this campaign, but they already said that they're not going to, that there's a ceasefire in effect. So it seems like a real conundrum, Harley.
It is, but I want to add something that should make us both feel a little bit better. If you remember with the Munich massacre, Golda Meir said, we're going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to take out every murderer who killed Israeli athletes. It took Israel 22 years to do that. They will do that again with Gaza. They're going to find every Hamas who took part in savagery, rape, and murder of innocent Israeli civilians, and they will track them down, and however long it takes, they will take out those people. That's the social contract that Israel has with the Jewish people, to make sure the world learns that you can't kill Jews with impunity, that there will be consequences, and however long it takes, Israel will hunt down the killers and take them out.
Well, Israel does have an incredible defense force. The IDF knows how to do what it does very, very well, and I'm sure what you're saying is highly accurate. Harley Lippman, we really appreciate you being here on the 11th Hour Report tonight. Thanks so much.